I would like to welcome all of you to the IFX Expo Asia for the year 2015. My name is Erez Romas. I'm COO of Forex Magnates. I think that this is a very good timing to have a conference about the Forex industry because we have all seen that you can do your business and then one day you wake up in the morning and you see that everything was changed. And I think that the S&B crisis or let's say turmoil have proved to all of us that discourse is the most important thing that you can have in order to really understand the industry in which you're working. We in Forex Magnates saw a tremendous interest in people thirsty for knowledge, for understanding about what is happening and how they can actually cope with it. We are going to switch a little bit the focus of this event and make sure that we touch on that crisis in each of our panels. We're going to begin with our first panel of the day, a panel about the role of digital currency, Bitcoin and digital currencies in Asia. I would like to present the panel's moderator, Mr. Avi Mizrahi, who is the managing editor of Forex Magnates. I hope you enjoy the day and have a great one. We will have some time for audience Q&A at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliz. So the last year has been quite interesting for Bitcoin, I would say. We've seen the price take a hit, but the technology has certainly developed and became a lot more mature. And I think this is a great time for the Forex industry to have a look at Bitcoin, which is the cutting edge of currencies, and we are in the currency trading business. So without further introduction, I'll just introduce everyone. I just wanted to say that Sandy Peng unfortunately couldn't be here today. She had an emergency at the office. Please.
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Just talk close.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maxine Ryan, and I'm the COO of BitSpark Limited. Basically, we do Bitcoin remittances, but we're also an exchange as well. Personally, I spearhead the remittance side of the company. So I guess on this panel, I'll be speaking mostly about remittances and I guess the opportunities of Bitcoin remittances in Asia.
Hi there, I'm Hugh Madden. Previously, I was doing institutional FX for many, many years, globally FX architect for HSBC in my last role. Now I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of ANX, which we're basically a white label provider for Bitcoin exchange products. We've acquired a few competitors ourselves, but also we've got some CFD players who are acquiring white labels as a feeder to bring in new types of business. So my expertise is how to price and manage risk around that, and I can talk about the parallels between how you manage your notional market risk for a CFD platform versus how you do that with Bitcoin. It's quite different. So Hugh Madden.
Hi, my name is Rich Teo. I'm a co-founder at ItBit. ItBit is a Bitcoin exchange headquartered in New York and with offices in Singapore as well. We have about 40 people globally. We trade US dollar, euros, and Sing dollars against the Bitcoin pair. We've been around for about 3 years. Our focus is mainly on working with governments and working with regulators to make sure that we can help shift Bitcoin towards the light, at least in terms of the mainstream and in terms of regulators. And my background is I spent, I guess, the last 10 years prior to ItBit in investment banking and at a hedge fund in New York.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason. I'm the CEO of Bitcoin. Our company is mainly responsible for the Bitcoin vending kiosk, which we call BTM. And we have established for almost a year. And we are now having more than 40 machines operating in Macau, China, and Hong Kong. And we are one of the leading BTM company in Asia as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you see a very knowledgeable panel. So the first question I want to get into is the most relevant to the Forex industry, which is how can international companies, such as the Forex industry that uses different payment providers, and payment is a key issue for any international company, so they can get funds globally. So I want to ask you each, what do you think are the opportunities that Bitcoin provide for international companies?
Okay, I guess I'll start. Something that I really like to exemplify about Bitcoin is that its utility. So that means how easy it is to use. First of all, I know that with a lot of B2B businesses, there's difficulty with getting your money overseas quickly and cheaply at that. And Bitcoin, it's 24 hours. It's cheap to use, but also it's borderless as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the borderless nature of Bitcoin makes it an extraordinary payment method for the internet. So it's extremely liquid and it's very convenient. Most people talk about, get lost in politics and economics and other factors when they're talking about Bitcoin. But when you see a demonstration of someone making, let's say, a $500,000 Bitcoin payment, it's the convenience and ease of use, which is incredible. They'll literally hold their phone up to the screen to a QR code, press go, and that payment will happen. Now, with a lot of CFD players being impacted by recent credit card changes in the States, I think it's probably about time for CFD players just to start looking at Bitcoin and what it means for an easy way to get riskless funds into their organization.
I think in terms of what Bitcoin is and the technology, it definitely allows for that. Definitely agree that it's a great mechanism. I think what the industry has been trying to build for the last 2 years is just really better connectivity to use Bitcoin in regular payments that companies are really used to. And I think that involves having to work better with existing financial institutions to be able to convert Bitcoins to whatever that particular company needs, whether it's local currency or anything else. And I think that's an ongoing challenge to make Bitcoin more mainstream, not so much improving the Bitcoin technology itself.
Actually, if I may, sorry, and one thing we just ignore in the Bitcoin industry because we're so used to there being no market risk for payments providers. But most people who are thinking about taking Bitcoin as a payments method, they think, I can't use it, it's too volatile, I'll probably take a loss. But the truth of the matter is no one does that. Everyone uses a very strong provider who does real-time pricing, so you have a real-time price feed to your site, which is priced in whatever currency you're pricing. This could be 200,000 US, and they will send a Bitcoin payment for that amount, and your payment provider will instantly convert that at no market risk to you and deliver the funds to your account. So there is actually no market risk in taking Bitcoin.
I think something that a lot of people ask about Bitcoin remittances, well, the #1 question that I get anyway is, well, you know, my money's being exposed to the volatility of the Bitcoin market. And I just tell them that that will never happen. Your money is transferred instantly. And it's about using Bitcoin as a transfer of value. But going back to the question, Bitcoin is open source. So what that means is that, let's just say if I was a bank, I could potentially get this open source technology and I could tailor it to my company. So let's just say maybe there's a HSBC coin. You know, so they're not as exposed to, I guess, the political side of Bitcoin, but they can use it to their own advantage as well.
It's obvious that Bitcoin is quick and simple for the international payment. And right now, when the Bitcoin has become more popular, you can see many trading platforms around the world, and you can sell the Bitcoin in USA easily, or in China, in Hong Kong, it's easily. And one more thing is that we can see there's more like Bitcoin futures that happening here. So it's just like any trading company that you have a lot of euro or you have a lot of US dollar that you can right now you can hedge a Bitcoin, which you can regard as an international currency as well.
I see. Well, a follow-up question on that.
I would just add to that point, though. I think the challenge to that really is deep liquidity in currency pairs other than the US dollar.
So who do you see adopting it in the Forex industry? Will it be payment providers that are already accepting credit cards and online payment methods, or will it or it should be done on the broker side because it's so technologically available?
So clearly both. And my comments on market risk, the answer is completely different for both of those purposes. So a very easy entrance to Bitcoin is to take it as a payment method. You don't take any market risk. Customers who may have trouble with banking from their particular jurisdiction, or they just don't have credit cards, or you can't take credit cards, Bitcoin will solve that hurdle for you instantly. So it's a very liquid and riskless way to onboard and offboard customer funds. On the other hand, a lot of people like Bitcoin because it's a very natural way to learn trading for the new generation. All of the new generation knows about Bitcoin. Most of them don't know about margined FX or CFDs. It's a very natural way to onboard an entire new generation of traders. But price discovery and managing your underlying risk, entirely different situation. The last margined FX platform I put in, the price discovering is absolutely simple. You just hook up to anyone, get a good quality FX feed, and then for hedging your underlying, you just hedge the notionals on the spot market, and you roll your overnight positions with swaps. Very, very easy for FX. For Bitcoin, it's a complex market. There's many players. There's credit risk, and there's no mature derivatives or swaps market that allow you to manage your underlying risk like that. But that said, the prize is there. The whole new generation, they all know about Bitcoin. They're all starting to use it, and pretty soon they'll all start to trade it. It's a great way to get new, non-professional, just starting out traders onto your platform where you can slowly introduce them to other instruments. And of course, many people are doing that, I guess, at least IG markets, but I think there's a few players out here now that do have a Bitcoin pair.
And I wanted to know, what do you think are the challenges so far for payment and financial companies? Because except for trading, we haven't seen it adopted yet as a payment method, despite that in other industries, for example, Microsoft has announced that they'll endorse it, and we saw an investment from New York Stock Exchange. So it is getting more mainstream, but we still haven't seen it adopted by payment as a payment method.
Actually, there's a new conglomeration with BitPay, if you heard about that. BitPay has just collaboration with they have a cooperation with the BitPay and PayPal, that they are doing the payment actually. So it's somehow like in the coming time that I think that when it's become more popular, like what ANX right now is doing, they are trying to have the debit card in Bitcoin and using the Visa. Is it Visa or Master? I forgot.
Actually, I can't say in a public forum.
Okay. So it's become more popular, I can say, in 2015. There's more payment method, like you can see a debit card that you're using on the payment side. Because in the merchant, for example, if you're using Master or Visa card, after the client has paid, has using the credit card to pay for the payment, then the merchant usually they have to wait for 1 or 2 days to receive their payment. But if you're using Bitcoin, you can instantly, the merchant, they can check their account right now, and they can use the Bitcoin. Actually, it's really fast, and the cost is much lower than normal payment right now. So it's become more popular. It's reasonable. There's a reason for them to use it a popular way. But
I think, I think in the States, merchant processing is actually very popular, but in Asia, it's something that is missing. And I think it's missing because there isn't enough early stage startups who are making a product that's easy to use. So what I mean by that is making a product whereby a person doesn't have to know about the technology of Bitcoin to be able to use it. So that's what BitSpark is trying to do with remittances, whereby we provide a service where you don't have to know anything about Bitcoin, but you can still leverage the characteristics of it.
I think that keeping with the question of why payments hasn't really taken off in Asia or anywhere in the world for Bitcoin, I think honestly it's that when Bitcoin first started, people said, hey, look, it's instant payments, it's low cost and it's fast, and in reality you have to learn how to use it, and it's not that fast. If you go to a processor, yeah, you could receive it fast, but if you were to send it, it actually takes quite long. And to get a confirmed Bitcoin transaction could take up to an hour. And in reality, in the same time as Bitcoin's launched, there have been really awesome alternatives to making payments. People can make instant payments at a very, very low cost. Whereas in reality, in Bitcoin, you probably still have to fund it. It takes time for it to get into your account. It gets to confirmations. And then if you're using a service provider that hedges out all those risks, they charge anywhere between 3 to 5% versus using any other instant payment methods, Alipay, PayPal, or any of those.
And actually, I'd like to challenge the statement that it's not used. If you think of Bitcoin similar as a small illiquid currency, so it's got a market cap of about 4 billion at the moment, and yet it's taken directly by Dell, by Microsoft, by Overstock. So in terms of a successful adoption ratio, tell me any other sovereign currency that's only got a money supply of $4 billion and yet is taken directly by such huge players in the market. So actually, I think the uptake and adoptance of Bitcoin is absolutely outstanding. But it is a complete mistake, and many evangelists will sell this to you, but it's a complete mistake to think that it should be used for everything. Every technology, every form of payment, even every currency and every way of managing a currency, they've all got their right place in world trade. Bitcoin is extremely good for moving capital cross-border. It's not very good for micropayments. If you want to do 1 cent and have it done instantly, it's no good for that. But that becomes a last mile problem. There's no reason that something like Apple Pay and their competing products can't do a very good job of covering off that last mile. It's in everyone's face, it's on their phone, it's natural to use. But how do you get capital into those wallets to use? That's something that Bitcoin is truly outstanding for.
Okay, another great debate in the Bitcoin community is whether it's going to be used by traditional banked communities or by emerging economies where there's a lot of people who are unbanked. Now, we're here in Asia where we have great diversity, like people here in Hong Kong that, everybody has 6 credit cards, to countries where a vast majority don't have a bank account. So how do you see this? And especially, Maxine, if you can touch on remittances cross borders. How do you see this play out in Asia?
Sure. So I guess you're right in that Asia has many different places where there are people with bank accounts and there's a lot of people who are unbanked as well. So what's really great about Bitcoin is that all you need is a mobile phone that has internet access. So as technology starts to improve, it also gets cheaper. So what that means is that populations where they're unbanked, they have more access to smart devices as well. With smart devices, it means that they can use maybe an app such as the BitSpark app or something like that, and be able to send instant transactions all over the world. So I think over time there will be a larger adoption of the population which is unbanked using Bitcoin as a means of transfer.
Yeah, so in one of my many roles, I've done a lot of SWIFT payments processing for banks. And one very common statistic is that 1 in 3 payments got touched by a person. So we say that Bitcoin's pretty slow, doing a cross-border payment for an hour. 30% of SWIFT payments don't even make it without a person. Some of them take several days because of that fact. So I think really there's regulatory hurdles, as the regulators have to be happy that there's consumer protection in place, and of course anti-money laundering. But once those barriers are surpassed, then I think you're going to see financial institutions adopting Bitcoin just for very pure economic reasons. It's very, very expensive doing all that processing manually in different ways, and every bank with so much manual intervention. You would simply be closing down whole operational teams starting to use this technology.
I think it's also bringing trust back into transmitting money again, because I think everybody's experienced hardship sending money overseas. It might not arrive as the same amount as you want it to be. You might be exposed to costs, etc. But with Bitcoin, because of the network, you can see exactly what has arrived, what wallet it has gone to. So it acts as a public ledger. What that does is bring the money and the power over your money back to the user.
I think in terms of how Bitcoin could expand in Asia for payments, I kind of see the way I would describe the industry right now is still large centers where people are using it, trading it very actively, largely for speculation or for just whatever purposes for trading. I kind of really see it playing out as places like Hong Kong, Beijing in Asia, and Singapore as well, being places where people go to get in and out of Bitcoins that get great connectivity to banking and all that. And these places really building out businesses that can help serve people in other countries where mobile payments is important because you don't have a bank account, or if people were traveling to places where getting local currency was difficult, I think Bitcoin could be really useful there. But still, just like we see the world today, there are financial centers, there are money center banks, and you know, we still need these kind of establishments despite the fact that it's really decentralized.
Yeah, and in the place like Philippines or like or Indonesia, that the people, only a few of them have the bank account. So, but the internet is really great there. And for example, in Vietnam, they have a good internet everywhere. And it's simple that you can just download an app and you have a wallet, and it's just like a bank account as well. So the people don't have to trust the bank, or they don't have to go to lie up to the bank, but they can have the bank, for example, with our ATM or our BTM, then they can withdraw or send money anytime, anywhere, just using the Bitcoin ATM. And for remittance service, it's really simple, and yeah, it can be useful for Bitcoin, especially for people they don't use bank.
I just kind of want to bring it out of it just being able to send money with Bitcoin. You can actually send money with pretty much all cryptocurrencies. So I think a question that I get asked a lot is, well, you know, what if there's not enough liquidity in Bitcoin? And it's easy, because then you can just use another means of transfer as well.
And what countries do you see coming online with Bitcoin that haven't been banked so far?
I'd probably say the Philippines is a really big one, and Indonesia as well. And the reason why I say this is because we get a lot of inquiries from people from these two places who ask us, you know, how can we use Bitcoin, and how can we use it so that we can send money overseas or receive money as well. So I think places where there's high migration out of the country, but there's a big need for sending money back in, is where you'll see it most prevalent.
So it's definitely not an unbanked country, but I think China is going to be a very interesting market over the next 18 months. As we saw there was some pushback against Bitcoin a year ago, but that actually wasn't Bitcoin. It was all about QR-based payment methods coming out of Tenpay and Alipay. So these are very large institutions by themselves handling very large amounts of payments volumes for the retail market in China. I think that was the biggest concern, and that's where most of the slowdown, and to a large degree, Bitcoin was caught up in as collateral damage to those regulator kind of maturing going on in China. But I think China's now coming to a stage where they're starting to put some regs around and starting to allow, as you've probably seen, Tenpay and there's other huge institutions to start offering payments, and I think you'll see Bitcoin just coming in the slipstream of that. So I think China is now going to grow quite quickly as these alternate pay methods start to become okay in China.
Okay, so really that's the next question. You know, obviously China is the biggest economy, not just in Asia, but you know, on a PPP basis, it's also the biggest economy in the world right now. So obviously the regulation in China, the attitude in China toward Bitcoin is going to be a critical factor to its success. So I want to get everyone's impression of what do you think is going to be the regulatory position of China with regard to Bitcoin.
Yes, yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start. And Bitcoin really isn't very big as a market cap, as the amount of market participants. As far as China goes, it's very small. When you look at WeChat and Alipay and Tenpay, Bitcoin doesn't even show up on the radar. And all of the regs are going to be directed against those major players, and there'll be some regulations applying to Bitcoin on the back of that. So I think it's going to grow in China. It is popular in China, but compared to those very, very retail payment mechanisms, it's really, I don't think it's going to see too much airplay or regulatory cramp down over the next couple of months or next year.
It's interesting that many people have mistakenly think that there's a lot of regulation in China. Their attitude to Bitcoin is negative. Actually, in China right now, for the trading platform, they have almost 1 billion per day transaction. And their trading platform is the highest number around in the world. So actually in China, they are not that pessimistic to the Bitcoin development. And to me, I think at the end, for like any other country, like what Singapore has done, they just legalized the Bitcoin. I think every country, they have to, anyway, they have to accept Bitcoin and they have to regulate it in the final decision.
I kind of think China's position on Bitcoin is actually identical to what it was when they first talked about Bitcoin. I remember very clearly early December 2013, they came out with a statement from the various ministries that said, this is Bitcoin, this is what we're worried about. Customers need to have proper KYC, AML procedures. This is what we mean by KYC, this is what we mean by AML. There has to be anti-fraud issues related to it. How do you find customer funds? Who do you know, where are these payments coming from? And they clearly stated what any regulator should be logically concerned about, which is who's transferring money to who. Is this safe? Is there criminal activity? Is there money laundering involved? I think these are all very normal questions any regulator should ask. But what happened after that statement was that at that point, almost no exchange, you could just log into an exchange, put in any email or username, and you could just transfer money anywhere in the world. And I think from then till now, exchanges have been putting in policies that the government is getting a little bit more comfortable with. And I think eventually when people actually start looking at what they initially said, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's just time for the industry to catch up to those statements. And so I think, when that happens, I think Bitcoin industry in China will start growing again. And people who clearly don't do those things are no longer, unactive in the industry anymore. So the industry is a lot safer. There isn't any, Bitcoin company that's about to be shut down. The question then is, when do banks actually start engaging again and bring back the efficiencies of having banks and Bitcoin exchanges integrate very closely back in 2013? I think I'm hopeful that that would happen this year. Banks really care a lot on, when you look at a Bitcoin exchange, what are your policies, what are your compliance procedures, what are your anti-money laundering procedures? And I think companies are getting to that level where they can answer these questions a lot more clearly, hopefully this year as opposed to 2013.
If I had to pick where the most likely areas of controversy are going to be, well, I guess in this time of foreign exchange turmoil and a lot of pressure on sovereigns running managed or pegged currency, including China, I guess the frictionless cross-border nature of Bitcoin could be controversial there. And you see lots of various businesses now around the world trying to serve customers in China. And the fact that Bitcoin is readily available in China, it can seamlessly grow cross-border, and these foreign companies, FX brokers and CFD players or even gambling sites, that I'm sure there's going to be some regulatory controversy around the easy access of Chinese customers to access those markets, and that causing some cross-border concerns. So if I had to pick my area of regulatory controversy, it'll probably be something related to that domain.
Yeah, my area of regulatory biggest worries for Chinese regulators would really be fraud and theft. I think that, we talk about, Bitcoins being one way, being quick, being instant, and that really just means that if you were trying to steal money, you're trying to hack somebody, you would use Bitcoin more than anything else. So I think really kind of understanding what the issues are with Bitcoin, and that these things happen not because of not because of the nature of Bitcoin itself, but because of the positives of Bitcoin itself, and having better rules govern, what could be a one-way instant payment. Is something that would change that view. But as of right now, I mean, a lot of activities in terms of getting people to send money to the wrong account, and then that money being deposited at a Bitcoin exchange and then disappearing the next day. I think that is the biggest regulatory concern.
I see. Okay, I wanted to touch on a point that Maxine raised, which is what other digital currencies, other than Bitcoin, I mean, you see might be in use in the future. I've seen that ANX supports more currencies, and you as well. So please.
So I think as kind of time goes on and more people see the potential of Bitcoin, you get kind of more innovation on, inefficiency in markets and how you can change, create a coin, let's say. So there's lots of different ones, and the first thing that comes to mind is probably Nubits. And what Nubits is that it's a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the US dollar. So for people who are kind of, I guess, a bit wary of the Bitcoin price going up and down, they can use Nubits. And basically, as it's always pegged to the US dollar, your amount is the same. But you probably know a bit more about the exchange and...
Sure. So yeah, there is many, literally thousands of what's called altcoins, and others position themselves as Bitcoin 2.0. So there's many copycats trying to recreate a Bitcoin. And eventually one of them might start to succeed. But it's not necessarily all about the technology. With all things internet and all things new generation, it's about the network effect. What we see with Bitcoin right now is it's basically the Google of cryptocurrencies. And the thing that makes the currency so strong is that gigantic self-reinforcing network effect. It's not clear that anyone has innovated enough to be able to reach escape velocity through that network effect and take down Bitcoin. We could talk for hours about all the intriguing innovations, altcoins and Bitcoin 2.0 attempts, but there's nothing that's going to be commercially viable in a large sense in the short term. So you can think of Bitcoin as Google right now. I'm sure eventually someone's going to knock Google off, and the same holds true for Bitcoin. Maybe just not this year.
I've completely lost track of all the altcoins and alternatives out there. So, but I do believe that Bitcoin is still, something like 95% of market capitalization in digital currencies. So even at 95%, I think Bitcoin still has a ways to go to achieve liquidity and accessibility. So I think any other altcoin being able to get to that level where Bitcoin is still quite far away. What I would say is that there are, Bitcoin has its own blockchain, which is, the ledger in which Bitcoin movements are tracked. The people trying to use blockchain a lot better, what's commonly referred to as blockchain 2.0 technologies, could basically use Bitcoin as the gateway to push a lot of other different types of payments, which in my mind makes a little bit more sense than actually having alternative blockchains everywhere. And so I think that there's quite a few interesting players out there that that could do something.
Yeah, actually, just like Hugh said, there's a lot of altcoin right now, and it's just interesting. To me, there's no difference for having a Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Litecoin because it's the same. They are all digital currency. But just a few days ago, that Bill Gates, maybe someone had read the news that he is talking about digital currency. There's some thinking of, like, for example, Apple or Microsoft. If they develop some altcoin themselves, then it may be another Bitcoin. So we just have to wait and see. And yeah, it actually is quite. There's still some maybe there's some altcoin that are coming out from the Bitcoin, but right now Bitcoin is the mainstream. No, there's no doubt for right now.
Yeah, I've also heard talks about that. Fears that either Alipay or in the West, Apple with their new payment provider, or even Google are gonna create their own blockchain and create with their own like Google coin. Is that something that potentially endanger Bitcoin, or do you think that's gonna develop a larger community?
I guess in my career, I've engaged with corporates a lot, trying to take advantage of the open source software movement. The companies trying to get their head around the fact that people create software for free, and there's many very corporate companies have tried to take advantage of that and use open source software to their own benefit. I haven't seen anyone succeed. I haven't seen anyone even come remotely close to succeeding, because Bitcoin is a technology, it's a network effect, and it's an economy, and all of those things work together to create what is Bitcoin. All of the corporate attempts so far, this has already been tried. In fact, Amazon tried to create Amazon Coin. They always don't understand or accept the importance of the network effect, and they never get the economic incentives right. Like to try and create your own central bank with your own customer base and force them to use your technology, it never works. Absolutely never works. So it may happen somewhere, but I haven't seen any hints of a company that understands enough to be able to do that yet.
Yeah, to echo that point, you know, since the 90s, there have been endless number of people who tried to create digital currency. And all of these digital currencies were completely centralized, and that's why they failed. There's always one guy who said, "Hey, give me your money, and I'm going to give you these digital chips in return." And you know, as the years went by, these things never grew, or that there were some issues with these companies. I think in the U.S., the recent one was Liberty Reserve, where they've been taken down for money laundering. And so the advantage of Bitcoin really is that no one feels that this is theirs. No one feels that this belongs to anyone else. It's completely decentralized. Everywhere around the world, people talk about Bitcoin because in that country, there's a group of people who really, really love Bitcoin.
You know what? I think the internet's quite an analogy here. It's like there's been a few people who've tried to create their own internet. Let's get everyone to use my internet. And who was it? There was one. It was the very large US internet company for a while. They almost succeeded, but basically, no one's managed to create their own internet and have everyone on their own internet. And it's exactly the same with Bitcoin. Trying to create your own one of these things is doomed to failure.
And actually, I personally expect that there may be more altcoin in the coming futures, because what I think is just like you are having different currency. You have US dollar, you have euro, you have Hong Kong dollar. Just like for example, Bisparck, they are doing the Litecoin in exchange with Bitcoin. I expected that there will be more and more trading platform doing like the altcoin. They are doing trading, because it's interesting that you can see there another QE in Europe a few days ago, and people are asking about, oh, is Bitcoin backed up by anyone? And I'm thinking that it's backed up by the government, so what? And it's still printing money, and US is going in, is having another QE maybe. And that's why I think the people, Bill Gates, they have seen the futures or digital currency, because it's limited quality, and your purchasing power. You can save your purchasing power when you're having the Bitcoin in hands right now. It can be inflated because you cannot print any more Bitcoin after some time. So to me, I think, for example, maybe Microsoft, they develop their own altcoin. Maybe Apple, they develop their own coin. That in the futures, maybe there's a few coin they're using different currency, or maybe the government, they're using the digital coin as well, because no one believes in fiat currency maybe in the futures, because people are printing right now.
I think as some of the largest companies in the world now know, there is an enormous amount of value in peer-to-peer relationships on the internet. All of those relationships between people on the internet, they have a value. Now, with traditional sovereign currencies, paper, your money has a value. You feel it's backed by your government, it's backed by your sovereign. That trust in the system, trust in your country, makes you place trust in the piece of money you hold. With digital currencies, the trust is in the network. Every user of Bitcoin is trusting the relationships over the network between all the people also using that currency. So just like Google and all these other companies, the value they get out of the system is people on the internet and the relationships and the goodwill of internet users. It's a very strange concept for our generation to understand, but it's just like breathing for the new generation. That's where that's the value, that's the backing of digital currencies. Yes, there's good maths, there's good technology, there's good security, but most importantly, it's got that network effect of all of its users all over the world. I think of it like TripAdvisor. You don't go and ask a company where you should go and stay, what hotel you should trust. You go to TripAdvisor and you read thousands of random comments from other internet denizens, and reading those comments places more trust in the destination than anything else. It's a very strange effect, but that's actually how digital currencies work. They've got good maths, they've got good security, they have good technology, but they've got adoption by a large number of people all over the world who are also using it.
I think that network effect, it brings about one very important distinction. People believe that Bitcoin itself, just a string of code, holds actual intrinsic value. And I think that if Amazon, Apple, or any of these players were to create their own digital currency, it would just be something that was one-to-one with the dollar or something like that. And no one would believe that it, in and of itself, was something that actually would hold intrinsic value.
Well, they can also peg it to a service. Question. Okay. So we're about to finish in 10 minutes. So now we'll open up the floor for questions.
Thank you. My main concern about Bitcoin and digital currencies in general is... Oh, sorry. My name is Daniel Shkuri. I'm from Meteor Spark, providing web and mobile development services here in Hong Kong, and also have a startup that's involved in some kind of a marketplace. So I looked for alternative payments as a solution for the beginning. Anyway, my main concern with Bitcoin is more philosophical than practical, and that is the fact that it is inherently deflationary currency. Now, you talked earlier about the fact that people will lose faith in fiat currencies because they keep printing it. They keep printing it because currently the world is facing deflation if they wouldn't printed it. And in a deflationary economy, the situation is the situation works against new businesses and against trade in general, because people prefer to keep their currency in their hand instead of using it or investing it. And the more I thought about it, I don't see how a digital currency that has no notion of consumer price index or any way to determine what are the levels of liquidity in the market, how can such a currency really work and provide the same quality, the same thing that we expect to receive from the fiat currencies that we have, which are a great invention at the end of the day?
I guess you're asking a question that no one can answer. Adam Smith himself said that his theory of economics was flawed and we needed something better. So a lot of people don't believe in central planning, and a lot of people do. And the truth of the matter is, the best solution is somewhere in the middle, no doubt, and none of us know it. And so I guess what you're really asking is, should you have managed interest rates, or should you not? Should you have a centrally planned economy or a free market? Bitcoin is fixed. There is yearly inflation which pays the miners, but the key thing is it's known, which means all things are relative. The fact that it's known means the money supply is completely predictable. It's like having fixed interest rates. Now, if you're asking, is it better for the world economy to have central planning and central banks or not? I don't think anyone on the planet can actually answer that question.
That's not really it. I mean, eventually there is limited amount of Bitcoins, okay? And the more people will use it, the value of each coin will go up, okay? You can't form economy based on this coins.
Which would encourage them to hoard them. And
Yes.
Traditional economics says we shouldn't hoard, we shouldn't save, we should actually put that back into the economy to cause economic growth.
Right.
But there needs to be appropriate risk rewards set up in your system such that people only take sensible risks. So you shouldn't be investing capital, hard-earned saved capital, on ventures that don't have good commercial sense, because it's bad for the whole system overall. It's wasted money. I still think it's a very deep philosophical question that I don't think anyone on the planet can answer, let alone this board.
Do you know of any currency that is, of any altcoin which is not capped by the amount of coins available?
There actually is an enormous amount of innovation. There is some inflationary altcoins. There is deflationary altcoins. There's all sorts of experiments actually in these fields, and it makes very good reading material.
By the way, I've got an answer to your question, but we can talk offline. My name's Joseph Wang. I work for BitQuant Research Laboratories. I do quantitative analytics, and I'm also a Bitcoin futures trader. I was wondering, since we're at a place where everybody does derivatives, if you could mention your thoughts on how you think that Bitcoin derivatives fits into the ecosystem, and how the whole complex of Bitcoin and its derivatives fits in the Forex ecosystem. Thank you.
Who wants to?
I have many views, but yeah, please.
Oh, I was going to say that just I think Bitcoin derivatives are an extremely important innovation. I think what we see a lot of the time in terms of price instability or new merchants coming on, an inability for people to deal with the volatility risk of Bitcoin. I think the adoption of larger, better derivatives platforms in Bitcoin is really important. There are several that are doing really well and growing quite quickly. I think better rules and deeper liquidity around that in the long run would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, derivatives are just an absolute must for Bitcoin to have very deep and broad utilization. Especially for a large corporate, if they're holding some Bitcoins, they don't need to be able to hedge their spot exposures. They need to be able to hedge statistically their predicted cash flows, and they have to have a derivatives market to do that. So we have to have a derivatives market for it to work. And as I'm sure you know, being a futures trader, there's many markets out there now. The problem we have with the markets out there now is they're not regulated. Derivatives markets, they basically need to be regulated. There's two of the biggest players doing Bitcoin derivatives. They weren't adequately managing their margins. And so when there were some huge spikes, the Swiss franc 30% in a matter of hours kind of spike happens every couple of months in Bitcoin. And some of the largest futures players, they gapped way past all the margins held, and they socialised the losses amongst all the people who had placed winning bets. So basically, derivatives are a must, but they do need to be regulated, and they need to be run by professional players. There is one actually CFTC licensed swap company now where you can trade swaps, completely regulated in the States, which is quite a big move.
Just the last point, it was regulated as a CEF, which is not really a complete regulation under CFTC, unlike a DCM or DCO. So still something that moves towards a DCM, DCO type structure would have proper rule books and proper margining of all counterparties, and I think that's what's gonna be needed.
So I think, as I mentioned briefly before, if you're running say margined FX, you hedge your underlyings. You hedge your underlyings of notional spot, but then you roll your positions with swaps. Actually, I'm quite curious to how some of the CFD players are doing this at the moment with Bitcoin. So if anyone is doing so and would want to chat, please do.
I want to thank the panel. I think we learned a lot, but of course it's a very big subject, and there's so much we didn't get to talk about. So I'm hoping everyone can keep the conversation going after the panel, and it's been great. Thank you.